You're listening to the Be Better Off Show by Kelly+Partners.
Well, welcome to the Be Better Off Show, where we find amazing Australians to bring us their incredible stories that can help us all be healthier, wealthier, wiser. And this morning we've got the founder and CEO, Anthony McMahon of Intraceuticals Professional Skincare. I'm really looking forward to our chat. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope everyone out there is coping in these exciting times. Good morning, Anthony.
Good morning, and thanks for having me here. And let's get into it.
I appreciate it. Now, I always like to say, Anthony, I like to start at the beginning because the beginning is a great place to start. Where were you born? Did you have brothers and sisters? What were your parents do? Where'd you go to school? And then what'd you do immediately after school?
Okay. Born in Warrnambool. 6 big brothers. No sisters. Mum and dad. Dad was a boilermaker by trade, but really, a jack of all trades. So dad was an interesting character, an inventor. He, all the pool fences.
Yep.
With the little lock on the top.
Yep. My
dad presented that to Hills Hoists a very long time ago, before it ever existed. He created it as a gate catch to stop horses and cattle from getting out of gates, and designed it so that it would automatically close and bolt shut once you drove through. And he wanted help to get the patent done, and they turned him down because then they stole it and made it themselves. True story. Anyway, mum was a school teacher and a nurse. Very interesting woman. She was in the convent to begin with. She was going to change orders, and then she spent 12 months out of the convent in the meantime and met my dad and got married and had 7 kids. So,
there you go.
So there you go. Not many people can say their mother was a nun, but there you go. That's
so when you left Warrnambool, where did you go at 6?
We went to Geelong. Dad moved us all to Geelong because he thought we'd all have better job opportunities there. I don't mind telling you, school bored the hell out of me. I just found it boring. I just couldn't.
And then you finished school, and how did you get into your business?
I left school when I was 15.
How does somebody with your background decide that skincare is your thing?
Evolution. I left school at 15. I left school on Friday, started work on Monday, working for Myers in the toy department. Christmas. A great experience. I left Myers and I moved to Melbourne by myself when I was 16, and I got a job at a stationery company called Norman Brothers. I was still studying, obviously, in those days. But I learned a lot there. I started there doing cost accounting. So I was working in credit control, and then they made me that I was going to be the head of the credit control or something, apparently. I was about 17 at the time. And for some reason, the lady that was running, that was quite a big department in those days, there was about 50 people in it. And she appointed me to take her place on the Retail Traders Association, the credit group board. I was sort of plunged into reading all about law and all sorts of things. Still doing by that time, I'd finished my 5th form, and I was doing a business studies certificate. Anyway, then what happened? I fell in love and decided I wanted to go and do other stuff and moved to Queensland, as you do. I was about, I think I was, 18 or 19 probably, and worked up there as a credit manager with Boral for a year or so. And came back, worked for another company, but my dad was very, very sick. And I moved back to be, closer to him. He passed away, probably a year later, I suppose. But I had a fortunate position then with a public company called Kornblums. I don't know if you've ever heard of Kornblums. At the time, it was all very controversial. They weren't a huge company, but they were a public company. And I was the assistant to the accountant. I'd be the guy that was driving the chairman around, or the company secretary. So I had lots of time and chats with those guys. I used to drive up from Geelong to Melbourne every day, and I'd normally get into the office. I'd like to get in early, so I'm a bit of an early riser. So I'd be in the office at 7, and the only people who would be in the office at that time was the chairman. So we regularly got to have a cup of tea with the chairman in his office and have a bit of a chat. So you got a different perspective, I think, on things from that point of view. Anyway, of course, after a while, I got sick of driving up and down from Geelong every day, and I went into the shoe business. I got a job in costing and a sort of a bit of a career sort of plan, I suppose. That was part of Dunlop. It was supposed to take 7 years, but anyway, I think I was about 24. I was the national sales manager, so I'd sort of gone through the whole financial thing. Went into sales, just seeing little opportunities that people didn't see. I remember my first real sales role. We're still working in finance, but someone came out and they said they all these seconds shoes, shoes that were damaged or whatever. And they said to me, oh, look, just give a couple of these people a call and see if you can get them to take them for, $1 or whatever. And anyway, I spoke to a couple of these people that sold that sort of stuff, and I got $3 for them. And they went, shit. Because there was tens of thousands of them, we were making a million pair of shoes a year. So, they went, oh, hang on a second.
Put him in sales.
Put him in sales, that's right. So I did sales, and then I did marketing, design, like research on fashion and all that sort of stuff. And like everything else, after a while, I got bored and probably a bit frustrated. I could see that industry really wasn't going to go anywhere in the long term. It was all being taken over by imports. But again, I had a good opportunity, so I travelled overseas. I was working on some of their just-in-time manufacturing systems, with setting up stuff in China, looking at materials from all around the world, trying to coordinate what people were doing and reducing lead times, all that sort of thing. So I had good exposure to international markets in terms of purchasing and supply. And then after that, I went into computers. A friend got me a job pretty much working for a printer company, just doing sales. I just wanted to sort of get into it. And then I started my own computer company about 6 months later, I suppose.
And what year was that, Anthony?
Well, when was that? That would have been mid 80s, I suppose.
Yeah. And what was that company doing?
We were building PCs. Basically, and it was called Computer Clearance Center.
Yeah.
And I remember we were selling the Imagineering PCs, and they had all these. They'd made all these coloured ones, and they couldn't sell them. So that was perfect for me. I bought them for next to nothing and sold them for a very good price. And people literally, it was hilarious actually. I had a little shop. And I'd taken over the shop next door, so I had two shops. One was the work area, another one was the sales area. And we literally had a truck pulling up, at out the front of one shop, unloading machines, configuring them, setting them up, coming around back through the back door and delivering to the line of people that were waiting out the front of the shop on the other side. So, sometimes you have your little wins.
Yep.
And that business didn't really last, because the guy that I went into it with, he went broke. A lot of people went broke, I suppose, after a while in that industry, because it started to consolidate. So he went broke, which pretty much meant that, we were sort of over with. So there wasn't much I could do about that. Anyway, I was offered a job, went and worked with another company for a little while, and then just started up again on my own. I'm that sort of person. I've been working for myself one way or another since I was 10, mowing people's lawns, and that's sort of never stopped. It's just something that's in me. And probably the computer business was still, was quite good to me. I had joint ventures with multinationals at different times. I sold my last computer-related business was software. Sold that to a .com, and unfortunately, the .com bubble burst 3 days before that company floated. so I didn't really make much money out of that. But at least I had enough to take a break and ponder what I was going to do next, because I had no idea. I thought,
yep. So this is early 2000. This is 2000.
This is 2000.
That's the one.
What am I going to do? I'd recently just divorced, and I kind of sat around, looked at the ceiling pretty much.
And how old were you at that point?
I must have been 41.
Yep.
And anyway, I had a basic principle that I'd heard and that I believed in, and that was it was about invention and creation of things. And it said that you need to come up with something that everybody's got and improve it by 10%. And if you do that, you'll be successful, if you can do it. So if people kind of laughed, I suppose, at it, but I said, okay, I think I'll do some research into air. How could I sell air? Everyone's got air. We'll just come up with a better version of air. I looked into importing Himalayan air, all kinds of ways of working on air. But as I was researching that, then I found a thing called oxygen bars, which had just started to do something in the US. And I thought, well, oxygen, that's kind of air. So I did some more research on that. In Australia, it had just been deregulated, as it used to be a prescription-only gas, and it had been deregulated. So I thought, that's okay, all right, I'll have a go at this. And I started making oxygen bars, which were a great novelty, but you can't make money out of them. There's still a couple of my oxygen bars in Las Vegas, actually.
Right.
But, if you don't have 40,000 people going past them a day, you're not going to make any money. I had them in nightclubs. I was in nightclubs until 2 and 3 in the morning, because it's quite good to sober you up. Sit there. So we used to sit there at 20 different aromas, if you like, or I just call them flavors of oxygen. You sit there and breathe your oxygen for 10 minutes. So I thought, well, this is no good. Where can I find people that have nothing to do for like half an hour or an hour? That's what I need. If people got nothing to do for half an hour, they might pay $10 to have a bit of a hit on the oxygen. So I thought, hairdressers, that'll work. And so I made a little small portable unit that looked jazzy in a hairdressing salon, and because the girls will be going there, they're getting their hair dyed, they've got to sit there for an hour. That'll have to work. I thought this will be great. Hairdressers have no money. and in general, they're not very good at selling things other than hairdos. So that didn't really work out. However, I went to a beauty show, and someone said to me, "Could you do a facial with this?" Well, to be honest with you, I had no idea what a facial was. And I said, "Yeah, sure you could. Why not?" And I went home and I did some research. There were people doing a thing called an oxygen facial that did exist. But in the time that I was working on all this stuff with oxygen, I'd done heaps of research on it. I understood a fair amount about it. So I started doing research into skincare, and I realized that what they were doing with the oxygen facial was just rubbish. It was just doing nothing. They was sort of pretty much just spraying oil on the skin and it'd come up nice and shiny, and that was it. So I thought I can make a better version of this, and I created a version that sort of worked on like a mini hyperbaric pressure facial. And with a friend who was a pharmacist, or at least had training as a pharmacist, I developed a serum out of hyaluronics, which was based on some research that had been done in Australia using hyaluronic acid, which you might have heard of now, but no one had heard of it then. And they were using it to deliver specific steroids to treat skin cancers topically. So they, put occlusive patches and things and use the hyaluronic because it'd go straight through the skin. Now, obviously, we couldn't use something that went straight through the skin, but I did recognize that if you put hyaluronic in its natural state, which is a fairly big molecule, if you put it on top of the skin, that'll pull the moisture out of your skin instead of going in. So anyone who had hyaluronics, that's pretty much what they were doing. So the skin would kind of feel moist, I suppose, on the top, but over a period of time, it would actually dry it out. So I developed a thing called hyaluronic layering, which used several different types of hyaluronics, and started walking the streets with a machine and going into beauty salons, see if they wanted to have a facial. And then I'd do this treatment that I developed for them, and they'd ask me lots of questions, and I'd write down all the questions, and I'd go home and find out all the answers. And about 6 months after that, I made my first sale. That was in July 2002. By 2004, we had, quite a number of accounts opened in Australia, and I decided to go to the US. So one of my daughters, who was great on the phone, she was sitting up at night making appointments for me in LA. So I got on a plane, I went over there, I had my machine, and I did the same thing. And I went and did all these appointments. The first appointment was a great eye opener. It was on Crenshaw Boulevard.
And you invented the machine and built it?
No, I created the method and the way the machine needed to be put together.
Yeah.
So I took something that existed and I improved it. That's basically what it comes down to. So I changed the way that it was configured. Basically it's an oxygen concentrator. Then I found that you can get a medical version of an oxygen concentrator. And then I worked out how that would need to be changed in order to make it work. Because the other thing that was a problem for people who were doing anything with oxygen previously was it was in tanks. And that proved to be problematic for everybody because you had to have special licenses, you couldn't get insurance, there was all sorts of issues with it. And you had to kick in the tank refill, whereas this machine just provides oxygen forever. In fact, we've still got machines that have been out there for more than 15 years and still work. So
terrific. So were you making the machines in Australia?
We were doing all the modifications to them here.
Yeah. So I interrupted you. Go to Crenshaw Boulevard.
So the first appointment was on Crenshaw Boulevard in Compton, and I'm not kidding. I'm driving down the street. I'm looking at the road map, and I'm going, well, it's got to be the place. And this place, it had bars on the front of it like I'd never seen. They were like prison bars. The whole front of the shop was all graffitied, and this is not a joke. Less than 100 yards down the street from the shop was a car that was burnt out and still smouldering. And I decided not to do that appointment. And it was just quite funny. I pulled up a set of lights, and this guy was walking across the street, sort of, with a slow kind of swagger going on. And he just looked over at me and went, It's like, what the hell are you doing here? And anyway, I went on, and I did make a sale on that particular day. But what more importantly was I met some girls who were beauty therapists, and I decided to go and do a show in Las Vegas. And these girls said they were going, and I said, well, why don't you come work for me for a day each while we're in Vegas? And they said, oh, great, that's great. They'll help pay for our trip. And I went to Las Vegas. I opened 10 accounts, drove back to LA, rented an apartment, opened a bank account, and launched the US.
And so at that point, how many accounts? You had 10 accounts now in Las Vegas. How many accounts did you have in Australia?
A couple of hundred.
Yep.
Yeah, a couple of hundred, I would say. Yeah.
And then you started building up the US.
And then started building up the US. There's always a certain amount of luck involved in some things, but I'll tell you about that later. An interesting story with a guy that just made $1 gazillion and luck. Anyway, I was commuting backwards and forwards for a while, every 2 weeks. So I was just sort of managing things, and then I put on a lady, Cindy, as an admin person, who was just fantastic, and she's still with me today. In the US, she still runs the admin. Fantastic lady, and her sister at the time. So they did the admin and the shipping and the packing and all of that stuff. And then I just started.
And so were you selling the machine with a subscription?
I was selling the machine, and the machine's the razor blade handle, and the serum's the blades. Yeah. All right. But then
they had to buy the serum from you as they need.
That's right. Exactly.
And did that business become Intraceuticals, or what did you call that business?
Right at that time, the name of that was O2 Salon.
Yeah.
But I quickly had to change that because salon in the US meant hair.
Yeah.
And there was also a lot of people coming into the market on the medical side because of the growth of things like Botox and all that hyaluronic injections for lips and all that sort of stuff. So I had to change the name, and I just wanted to come up with something that was a bit different. To be honest, I'm not that wrapped with the name, but I'm kind of stuck with it now.
Yeah.
Intraceuticals, because it means in the skin.
Okay, so for our audience today, how many people do you employ? How many accounts are you running? How many countries?
Okay, we've got accounts in about 60 countries.
Yeah.
At the moment, we probably have 3,000 plus active accounts.
Yeah.
Around the world.
Where's your head office now?
It's in Melbourne, in Kilsyth. So we've got our office and factory there. So we make all the cosmetics. We have a whole range of cosmetics, obviously, that we sell into those businesses. So we're at about 3,500 square meters in Bayswater. Not Bayswater, sorry, Kilsyth anyway, same area. And yeah, we create everything there. I've got a team of chemists that help me with my crazy formulation ideas.
Yeah.
And we just keep creating things, and our real motto is that we only make products that work.
Yep.
So, which is unusual for a skincare company. So we're very focused on actual result, while still taking into account the moves in market in terms of ingredient safety and sustainability, all that sort of thing.
How is sustainability reflected in your business?
Sustainability is reflected just in our some of our ingredients at the moment. We're doing a big push. We've actually got an Aboriginal group in just outside of Darwin that crop the kakadu plums, for instance, and so they're actually grown wild, and those communities go out and do the picking, and they decide exactly which one can be used and which one should be left, and all of that sort of thing. So we work with another company on that. And at the moment, I've got my chemists specifically working on natural ingredients from Australia that are being sustainably grown. We're particularly trying to work with Aboriginal communities, and in fact, I was just having some meetings in the last few months with the universities and things to see whether or not we can create some scholarships for Indigenous kids in biological science, in agri farming, things like that, to try and do something positive, and also think of innovative ways of using some of the great plants that we have here, which have got really, really good properties in them.
Yeah. So in terms of where you're at now and the lessons you've learned, if you could turn around to your young self and say, these are the things that have made the most difference. I certainly hear that inventor's perspective that no doubt comes all the way back from your dad. Yep. But what are the things that have helped you the most? Being prepared to transit every 2 weeks back and forward to LA and these sorts of things. But what are the things that have made the difference for you?
Start doing something. That's the first thing, right? If you have an idea, start. I used to mow people's lawns and I never had a lawnmower.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Me too. As a young guy, I had a lawnmower run. I used to go to people's house, get their lawnmower, clean it up.
That's right.
Use their lawnmower, give it back to them. They give me $20, and then I'd offer to do their car.
Yeah. Well, I used to get 20 cents.
Well, I used to get $20 to do the lawn, and then I'd expand into doing their cars, and they had 2 cars, so I get $20 a car.
There you go.
And then you're turning up and you're using their mower, their car washing equipment. They gave me all the stuff. All I had to do is stuff. Then I had one client where I would mow the lawn. I would do both cars, and I would blow back the tennis court, and I'd clean the pool.
Right.
And that was in about 1990. That was a $200 job. That was a lot of money. I was in
That's a heap of money. That sounds like my one of mine when I was about 11, I suppose. And I'd rocked up to this place. No one where I lived had pools or tennis courts, just by the way. But anyway.
Well, a lot of people that had them didn't have anyone to look after them. So I'd take houses that had a lot of stuff, and then I'd bang on their door and say, "Oh, who looks after your stuff?" And one of the clients had a jet ski, so that needed to be hosed down and cleaned. So I was looking for people with stuff that they needed things done to.
Absolutely.
So that's a good one. Number one, start. Number two, innovate. Invent.
Yeah, number two is well, innovate, but I guess you've got to have some skills to innovate. To innovate effectively. You need to be able to do some maths. I was terrible at maths at school, by the way. However, no one in the company would question anything about maths to me, as in if
I think that's because you learn the maths.
Because I learned it because I needed to learn it.
Because you needed you wanted to understand something.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's it was one of those, I wrote that down here as something that I wanted to mention, and that is that, you should, in your life, if you have the need and the time, there's nothing that you cannot learn.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I remember.
To be a learner.
You're going to learn rapidly when you have need. It's all those old cliches are pretty true. It's that.
And your sales experience, like you had finance experience, accounting experience, and then
sales experience,
manufacturing experience.
Exactly. So all of those things, they all come into the throw.
Come together.
It all comes together. You've sort of got an understanding of stuff. And that's interesting. Now I employ people with PhDs, and most of them have got, master's degrees or more than, and my kids are all, very well educated with multiple degrees and all the rest of it, and work in everything from sort of education to medical fields to all sorts of interesting creations, food and art. So
willingness, your willingness to keep going. A lot of people that have a setback, obviously with your computer companies, they did sort of okay, but you just seem to keep going.
Well, I think that's you got to look down, you got to go, well, still got all my fingers, I still got all my toes, let's go.
Yeah.
You have to deal with those situations the best you can, and just get on with it.
Yeah.
I'd work for one or two people for very short periods of time. I'm not a good employee.
And so as you look back now and you look forward, what's your sort of 20-year vision for the company? Are you one of these people that says you'll just work till you die because you enjoy your work, and you think you can have more impact in terms of what you're doing?
I think that I'm certainly one of those people who will probably work till they die, to some degree. But do I want to keep working at the same pace and in exactly the same thing? No, I don't. I think that do I think the company will go on? I think the company will be great. We've got heaps of products and market expansion ideas and all that sort of thing. There's lots of areas for that to grow, but I have lots of ideas, and so I guess I'd probably like at some point to get a bit of extra cash and start to invest in some of those other ideas that are very relevant. But I wouldn't want to be hitting the road at that point. However, some of the innovation stuff I'd love to get into, and and I think I've got a pretty good handle on world markets. I spend my mornings, dealing with the US. I normally start at 5 a.m, and then I sort of work my way around the world, basically.
With the time,
until the evening. So you've always got news of what's going on. It's like this whole COVID thing was very interesting. The most interesting thing for me, this is a bit of advice I could give to people, is, and I'm not sure who told it. Someone said it to me that I obviously respected because I always remembered it, and that is never have more than 30% of your business reliant on any one company, or any one supplier, or any one customer.
Yeah.
So I call it my 3x3 rule. So in the world, we've got a third of our business in the US, a third of in Australasia, including China, and a third in Europe and Africa. And then within the professional market, we have another thing people said you can't do. Anthony, you can't do that. It won't happen. We sell a third to doctors, to medi-spas, plastic surgeons, those sort of guys, dermatologists. We sell a third to sort of high-end day spas, who are all independent, sort of like it's a cottage business. And then we have a third now in hotel and resort. Every major resort and hotel chain in the world has at least a smattering of our products.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. So to finish up, Anthony, I've really enjoyed that chat today. Yeah. If there's a motto or a quote or a thought that really summarizes your approach to life and business, what would that be?
Never give up.
Very, very good. I really want to thank you for today. I think it's an intriguing story, and I want to reserve the right for another chat. I think that 3x3 rule, I think is just very, very wise, especially in these times where things are
COVID, that's kept us alive. When COVID started, our business in the first month of the real hit after March, our global business dropped 95%. That, of course, meant very hard decisions. Although I would say we've kept 80% of all of our staff globally.
Really great story. I really want to thank you for your time today.
Pleasure.
And for our listeners, look up Intraceuticals. It's a great Australian story. Anthony, thank you so much for your time. And as I love to say, have a great day.
Catch you later. Keep smiling.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Be Better Off Show. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate and review on Apple Podcasts.
Have a great day.